Welcome to The Explainer. All right, today we're tackling one of the most legendary crimes in history, the train heist. We're going to look at how it all started, how it was perfected, and maybe most importantly, why we're still so fascinated by it long after the crime itself pretty much disappeared. So, let's get into it. And for over a century, there was no bigger, more vulnerable way to move money than by train. As these railway networks just exploded across countries, they were like the arteries of commerce, right? Pumping all this wealth from place to place. But for a certain kind of criminal, they weren't just a sign of progress. Oh no. They were a moving vault on wheels, just a target waiting to be hit.
So the story of the train robbery, it's not just about crime. It's really about the birth of a legend. This is a story that was, forged in the dust of the frontier, but got polished to a super bright shine by Hollywood.
And really, it was the movies that cemented our image of the train robber, right? Think about it. Hollywood gave us this idea of the charming rebel, the daring adventurer who could outsmart the entire system with just a witty one-liner and a dramatic jump from a moving train. It painted this picture of a glamorous, almost victimless crime. But the reality? Oh, it was way, way grittier. For gangs like the Real Wild Bunch, train robbery was a brutal and often deadly business. I mean, Kid Curry, one of their most feared members, killed numerous lawmen. These weren't just simple robberies. They were violent, head-on confrontations. It was like a direct challenge to the law and order that was trying to tame the wild frontier. So, how did they actually pull these things off? Well, the methods changed a lot over time, from super careful planning to just pure, raw audacity. Let's break down the anatomy of two of history's most defining heists. Okay, so the very first great train robbery, way back in 1855, it wasn't about dynamite and shootouts at all. It was an inside job, a total masterpiece of cold, calculated planning. You had railway employees who helped the gang make these wax copies of the safe keys. So on the night of the heist, they just calmly unlocked the safes, swapped out all the gold for the exact same weight in lead shot, and just walked away. The crime was so clean, so perfect, that nobody even knew it happened until the shipment finally got to Paris. Okay, now let's fast forward over 100 years, and the scale had just exploded. Britain's Great Train Robbery of 1963 was one of the biggest heists in the country's history. We're talking about a gang of 15 guys who stopped a Royal Mail train and walked away with an absolutely staggering fortune.
And their planning was meticulous, right? They rigged the signals, they overpowered the crew, and then they just vanished into the night. They went to hide out at this remote farmhouse, thinking they'd pulled off the perfect crime. But their downfall, it came from the simplest, most careless mistake you can imagine. They left their fingerprints all over a Monopoly board they were using to pass the time while they were splitting up the cash. You can't make this stuff up.
But the evolution of the heist didn't stop there, with brute force or even intricate planning. The next big leap was into the world of pure psychological manipulation, and that led to what some people called the most perfect crime of all time. So, picture this. Japan, 1968. A lone man, dressed up as a police officer, stops a bank car. He doesn't threaten anyone. Nope, he warns them. He calmly says there's a bomb, and then, to sell it, he lights a flare under the car to create this illusion of an explosion. As the panicked employees scramble for safety, he just gets in the car and drives away with all the money. Pure theater. And get this, no weapons were used. Nobody got hurt. The thief and that 300 million yen just vanished. Poof, gone. To this day, it's one of the most famous unsolved crimes in Japanese history. It just goes to show you that the mind could be a much more powerful tool than dynamite ever was. But, the golden age of the train robbery couldn't last forever. The same kind of progress that built the railways in the first place would eventually create the technology to protect them. Technology basically became the new sheriff in town. Today, that classic train heist is pretty much impossible. Take India, for example. The Northeast Frontier Railway is rolling out a system called Drishti, which stands for Digital Railway Intelligent Seal Health Tracking and Inspection. It's basically an AI-powered surveillance network designed to stop theft before it can even get started. And when you look at it, the tools of the trade have just changed so dramatically, on both sides of the law. I mean, the outlaws' old tricks, relying on inside info and brute force, that's now countered by AI analysis, round-the-clock live streaming, and real-time alerts that can spot a problem in an instant.
The key thing here is that these new systems are proactive, not reactive. The AI is constantly analyzing the locks and seals on a moving train, it's capturing high-speed images, and it automatically triggers an alarm if a single door is tampered with. The game has just fundamentally changed.
Okay, so if the crime itself is basically a thing of the past, right? A victim of technology, why are we still so fascinated by it? Why does the story of the train robber still capture our imagination?
Well, the legend lives on because we are just drawn to this powerful myth of the outlaw. We romanticize this idea of the rebel fighting against a big, faceless system, the adventurer living by their own code. And in doing that, we kind of conveniently forget the brutal reality, that these were violent criminals whose careers often ended in a blaze of gunfire or a long, long time behind bars.
And this really gets to the heart of why these figures are so complicated in our culture. They embody this fantasy of rebellion and freedom that still resonates, even today. They weren't just thieves, they became symbols of a wild, untamed era. And they inspired this really strange mix of fear for what they did, and, you have to admit, a little admiration for their sheer audacity.
So technology might have closed this chapter of criminal history, but it's also because what we consider wealth has totally changed. We've moved from physical gold bars to digital bits and bytes. The battleground has shifted from the railways to computer networks, from safes to servers, and it really makes you wonder, what modern-day legends, what digital outlaws of this new frontier are being born right now?